Call the special common council meeting of November 4th to order, and note that we have 3 items on the agenda. First item is discussion on the vacancy created by the resignation of City of West Bend Mayor. Ian, Jay, I don't know which one's gonna.
So I think Jay's looking to me. Sorry. Jay's looking at me to fill you guys in on kind of the legal options. So we discussed in brief some of the options last time we were here. Essentially, the 2 main options you have are A, to fill the position under the statutes. It's very similar to what we've done when we filled alderperson before. Essentially, the council establishes a procedure. That procedure could be to, I mean, you could set it to council president, to alderperson, to specific requirements for somebody else to be appointed. As long as they're a resident of West Bend, you guys set the procedures on how that happens, vote, and fill the position. That person would serve as mayor until the next election. The next election in April is the regularly scheduled election for the mayor position. So this isn't a situation where the term of office would have run till 21, 22, and we need to have a special election to fill a post for the rest of the term. This would be the normal term for the office of mayor. If you appoint an alderperson, there'd be a conflict of office. So the alderperson would functionally have to resign as alderperson to take the position of mayor for the next, 5 months or so. The other option that's on the table is to leave the position vacant until the election. There is no statutory requirement for when a position must be filled. Given the time period and kind of the lull in action items other than the budget that comes in December, January, et cetera. I mean, even most of the construction contracts aren't really going to be before council until April. They'll be in front of Public Works to go out to bid in early spring. But they won't actually be presented to council for approval and certainly not ready for signature until after the election for the most part. But given that, it's perfectly reasonable. I did discuss with the league, and Claire found it to be reasonable to leave the position vacant. If you did that, the council president would serve as acting mayor, which is already in the statutes. That's what happens when the mayor would be absent or recuse under other circumstances. For the most part, the acting mayor has identical authority of the mayor. The only real exception is they can't veto something if the mayor has registered an objection. That's not an issue here because the mayor has resigned, so he can't register an objection to something. And we would need to address this. Well, the statutes for non-first class cities are silent on this, but we would have to address whether the conditions on how the council president, who's an alderperson, would vote versus exercising tie-breaking authority. Obviously, it doesn't make sense to have the authority to vote and to break a tie. That would functionally give one person 2 votes. We would establish that as part of a procedure. Functionally, I would recommend that if you take that route and you have an acting mayor, that the council president has to abstain from voting and notify the board that he would, or the common council, that he would be acting to break a tie. So he would abstain from voting on an item, and then he could retain the ability to vote, to break a tie. Functionally, Jay and I were discussing this. I think it's literally 5 or so times in the mayor's in Mayor Sinanikau's 9 years, or almost 9 years, that he had to break a tie. It's really, I think it was farmer's market, chickens, maybe an alcohol license or 2. Really, the number of times he's had to break a tie are few and far between. So I don't foresee that to be a huge issue, especially since if there's a tie, by choosing to break a tie, you're functionally creating a 7-person council to vote on something. So I think it's unlikely to be a major issue.
Anybody have any comments? Chris, go ahead.
Sure. I mean, my comment was the same even before the explanation. I I mean, unless, Steve, you're really itching to get out of your current seat, I mean, I would be in favor of leaving the office vacant, if you don't mind running our meetings for the next few months. I think that probably puts us all in a more comfortable position than having to go through the hassle of trying to appoint somebody either from within or outside.
I can answer that question right now. If I was to be put either in as the mayor or do it the way I'm doing it now, I have no intention of running for mayor. I don't want to be the mayor at this time. I'm happy doing the alderman thing. I'll be honest with you, if asked to do it as a council president and become the mayor, I will do it. But I would rather do it in the second instance, because if I become the mayor, I have to give up my seat.
Yeah.
And I won't be able to run for it for another year and a half again. You know, and if I'm going to stay active and do what I'm doing, I'd like to be able to find a way to help this council any way I can and be the acting mayor, but still know that when I'm done, I still got my seat.
Yep.
That's just my personal opinion. I don't know what you guys think, but Ian.
I will state the other thing is that if you look in the statutes, there's two procedures for this. The first is for Class 1 cities, so Milwaukee, and that is functionally leaving this position vacant. That's how that works, is the board president serves as, I think they call it interim mayor there. It explicitly says they don't get to vote on items, which would be a little bit different in this. But upon the election of a mayor, they revert to their aldermanics or their, normal council seat. So this really functionally isn't different than what Class 1 cities would do, except the same mechanism doesn't exist in the statutes for Class 2, 3, and 4. So you're kind of just creating that situation. You would create that situation by leaving the council seat vacant, or the mayor seat vacant for the 3 or 4 months. I'll also note that it would be very different. What my recommendation would be if the mayor had resigned, leaving a vacancy of 9 or 10 months before a special election. Especially during the spring and summer where it's much more busy. That would be a very different circumstance, and I don't know that it would be recommending leaving the position vacant as an option under those circumstances.
Yeah, I'd like to propose that we look to bring in a community member to serve as mayor, interim mayor, someone who's not planning to run for mayor, keeps them out of any potential issues with the election coming up. It also doesn't deny any district of a vote on any issue and still gives us the flexibility to determine ties.
Rich?
So I would go in the other direction, and I would leave it vacant, having you act as the acting mayor. I think that does give us the ability for Steve to vote for his constituency, and basically, if we brought somebody else in, that could be January timeframe before we got somebody seated. I don't know if having somebody that's not up to speed on our events or our issues, taking over for another 2.5 months is worth the trouble that it would be.
Mark?
Why do you believe that it's going to take us 2.5 months to find a qualified individual in the city to serve?
So first off, we'd have to come up with a procedure and a list of things that we're looking for in that individual, and then getting this group together during the busiest months of the year to try and get somebody voted in. I don't think is going to be an easy process. We've, in the past, it's taken roughly, I think, Generally, when we put out applications, I think it's for a 3-week to 4-week period of time that we accept applications for, different roles that we've had to appoint in the past, so.
Is that a legal requirement? Ian?
So the past practice has been to publish notice essentially and request applicants. That's what we've done in the past for alderperson when we've had vacancies. I want to say it's typically a 2-meeting timeframe, just because by the time, in normal 2-week schedule, by the time you get a notice, out, it's 10 days before the next meeting. So typically it's publish the notice, give 2 weeks for people to submit resumes, then those people come before the council. Council can ask them any questions, and then you select a replacement. There's not a specifically, again, it's the procedures set by Common Council. So you have the, Common Council has the ability to set whatever procedures they want, in replacing somebody. So it's just past practice to give, do you remember how long it was? Is a week or 2, right? To submit. Yeah, I want to say it's 2 weeks from the meeting to submit, essentially like a letter of, summarizing why you're applying and giving a resume or whatever.
John?
As Steve, my feelings are to leave the position vacant at this point, and have the president of the council just fill in for that short period of time. Steve has been on the council for quite a few years. He has a lot of knowledge of what's going on, and as you stated, and I understand, you don't want the mayor's position. You want to just remain as an alderman. And if you're willing to just step forward as a president council until elections, I would be definitely in favor of it.
Justice?
I know we've got somebody here in the audience that was nice enough to come down and put her hat in the ring. But I have to say, it's probably going to make the most sense to do what you're talking about, John. I do. It just seems to make sense. Or it would be fair enough, at least to put out the option for other people to put applications in. But that wouldn't be happening tonight, so I think I'll go with Auguster over here.
So if we go with the acting mayor and we come up to our meeting next week and we tie, it's game over. What are we going to do at that point in terms of the budget? We waited until long enough that
You're going to have to find a compromise or come back the next day until it's done.
what's the deadline on the budget, Ian?
I don't know if is it the November? Yeah, November 15th, so. And this is, it is the standard time frame for adopting the budget. The budget hearing's typically in the first meeting or the first substantive meeting in November, so.
Just a question on that. So procedurally, I just think of, like at the county board, if we have a tie, it dies. So couldn't that be an option too, or no?
With anything else, yes. Not with the budget.
Oh,
So
got it.
If it was, some of the other ones, do we approve a chicken ordinance? There's no motion that succeeds,
Yeah.
in the affirmative, so it dies. With the budget, you have to approve a budget one way or the other, so you have to compromise on that one issue. I will note that it's likely, obviously you guys can set the procedures you want, but it's likely that if you went out for applicants for the mayor position, you wouldn't have a mayor for that. You would have an acting mayor for that meeting regardless.
Yeah.
If you followed past practice for appointing an outside person. So,
Roger?
You do know that I ran for mayor twice and lost to our current mayor. And I worked with him right along regular because he won. But that doesn't mean that I wouldn't be interested in being the mayor of the city of West Bend. And I would be interested.
Andrew?
I'm also going to echo what Rich and Chris and John said. I think that if you like your position, you don't want to step up and we vote you in as interim. I think doing the vacancy so you can still keep your spot as alderman as well as the acting council president, I think that'd be the route I'd want to go.
So Ian, where do we go from here?
Somebody needs to make a motion. Well, let me preface that. I didn't put it in the packets because didn't know which way it would go. I do have a proposed resolution that kind of summarizes the leaving the position open. If you guys want to review it, it essentially addresses the, yeah. It addresses the leaving the position open. It also addresses the procedure for abstaining from a vote in order to have tie-breaking authority, and clarifies, make sure it's clear in our ordinances that the acting mayor shall serve in the place of the mayor on the committees which specifically reference the mayor being on, specifically Plan Commission and Joint Review Board. Plan Commission, the mayor is a member of by ordinance, and Joint Review Board, the ordinance reads, I believe, the mayor or his designee. I don't think that Mayor Sadonico ever appointed a designee, so the acting mayor would either serve or appoint a designee for Joint Review Board.
I'm on the Joint Review Board as well.
Yeah, I didn't.
So anytime he
There's our representative.
recused himself or chose not to come, it would have been me.
Okay,
So we do have an alderman member on that board now.
okay, all right,
Hasn't been always the case.
yeah.
Ian, can you just explain in the resolution how that, how the voting split, either whether he's wearing his alderman hat versus mayor hat, and how that works?
Yep, so the way it's worded in here, it says, in the event that the acting mayor chooses to exercise the tie-breaking authority as mayor, the acting mayor shall notify the common council prior to calling a vote that he is abstaining from voting as alderperson so that he may exercise the tie-breaking authority. So functionally speaking, somebody makes a motion, there's a second, prior to calling vote, he would say, I'm abstaining from voting to exercise tie-breaking authority. All in favor say aye, et cetera. So that he would abstain at that point. Again, if you want to tweak that, that's fine. That was based on my discussion with the league on how that would function. And then I think the rest of it's pretty self-explanatory as far as laying out the whereases and what would happen.
I'll make a motion to adopt the resolution that's printed.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, by the same sign. Motion carries. Thank you.
Can I just ask Ian to clarify that last point? Because if it does come up a week from tonight, Monday, I think having a conversation up front about it would be helpful. So Steve, under his sole authority as acting mayor, chooses on a vote-by-vote basis?
Correct.
Does he declare before every vote?
No, he would only declare if he's intending to exercise a tie-breaking vote.
But-
So if he were to intend to exercise a tie-breaking vote, he would notify prior to calling the vote. So we have a motion, we have a second, I will be abstaining from voting in order to exercise tie-breaking authority. All in favor say aye, all opposed nay. Realistically, Stephanie, can you do a roll call vote?
So practically speaking, that would only really occur if there was an absence or an abstention.
Correct,
Right. That's what I was just going to ask.
In a regular setting where everybody's present,
correct.
he really wouldn't have
It
that
would-
option.
I mean, that's Functionally speaking, it's unlikely to happen because by abstaining, he's now creating a 7-person board.
Right.
By, theoretically, if there was going to be a tie, if there was one absence, there wouldn't be a tie because you'd have 4-3. So by abstaining, he would create the tie. So it's an unlikely situation, given the makeup of the board, in order that a tie would happen. So, and again, it's a highly unlikely, it's an uncommon occurrence. I realize there was one issue that the budget, which may cause it, but fortunately or unfortunately, it's the one issue that you guys can't just let die and have to decide one way or the other. So, yeah.
Thanks.
Yes.
We have one board that has 3 members, Stephanie, John, or Steve, and the mayor. So now it's Steve and Stephanie.
Yes.
Is the liquor board able to function?
Licensing can act
Or
on a quorum
licensing?
of 2. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. The licensing board can go with 2 out of 3. So he won't count as 2, but whichever hat he wears can function still. And a lot of the licensing board issues have been resolved with the new liquor licensing. So picnic licenses are not going to be as big of an issue moving forward, so.
Ian, if, like Mark just brought up a point, say for some reason Stephanie and I disagree, and it ends up tied.
It's a recommendation only.
It's right, I was just gonna say, it still goes to the full common council
Correct.
for their
Correct.
vote on it.
Licensing board is recommendation only. Common council takes final action.
Okay. So it can't die in the
Correct.
recommendation period, okay. Anything else on that? If not, we'll move on to number 3, the 2020 capital improvement project, and I'm guessing, Jay, this is you?
I'll introduce it. It was in your packets and it's before you. So if you have any burning questions as we're talking about it, feel free to interrupt me and jump in. Let's start on the first page, page 1. And you can see maybe just looking at the chart first, the amount borrowed over the years. From a low of 1.38 in 2016 to the high of the 5.5 million regarding for the police station in 2013. We had discussed, and then the last 2 years, 2018, 2019, borrowing of 2 million. We've discussed moving that number up to 3 million. We shared that with you all in the past, specifically July, as to that being the plan. We have had numerous meetings with department heads, many of whom are in attendance tonight, that could speak to any projects that are listed or not in more detail than I, if you want to hear from them directly. We do and did have 2 proposals that we were discussing as staff down the stretch. Fire Chief Kudek, when he took delivery of the most recent vehicle, came to Carrie and myself with a proposal of, not his proposal, but a proposal of the fire company, the Pierce, who had a leasing option for us to explore. Carrie and I had a good meeting with the leasing agent, Chief Kudek, and talked through that as an option, really to try to afford more items within the 2020 CIP, and this budget does do that. So that if you look at, in addition to the 3 million, the 239,000 that says from funds on hand, and then flip ahead to page 2 in smaller font, halfway through that first chart, you see the 126,639 funds on hand, and then the note that discusses that being another mechanism to pay for that $1.1 million vehicle over the next 10 years. So it's a different funding source. It's the first time that we have put our toe in the water regarding leasing for a vehicle of this size. But it really frees up the entire 550,000 for 2020's budget, and then prospectively for 2021's capital improvement budget as well, and funds that fire truck over the next 10 years with payments from fund balance or from an improved financial picture of operating, if we're in such a position to be able to do that. No existing council can bind a future council. We can have that conversation. So you're not making a 10-year decision on where the funds are coming from. You're making a 1-year decision with an eye for the next 10 years. But I'm comfortable, Carrie's comfortable with the amount of our fund balance being healthy enough prospectively for the next 10 years to have those funds available. And again, the prospective numbers on our existing TIFs are in such a light that we are anticipating levy dollars returned to the city over the years, so it'll only improve that financial picture. Again, comfortable making the recommendation of this budget that you have before you. And then I think just maybe flipping ahead to the pages 4 through 8, it describes those projects in more detail. The first several line items are the $2 million in roads, as we discussed, having more of a focus on road maintenance in 2020. You can see the specific roads that are being proposed to be improved there. Moving on to page 5, one more holdout of engineering, road-related. Max has shared with me that and I know Doug Newman from Public Works has agreed that this should be a priority for 2020, but getting some improved epoxy markings down. We do hear from the constituents, I'm sure some of you have heard as well, that some of them are becoming hard to see, and it could be a safety issue. So Max has shared with me whether we were able to find some money to specifically fund and budget for improved markings, or whether he would have had to have taken it out of pavement maintenance program, that he was going to put some funds towards this in 2020. Moving on down the line, you see the $126,000, which is the first payment of the 10-year payment. And then it gets into parks. At the bottom on page 5, we've been consistently budgeting for the EAB response, the $40,000 that's included for 2020. You'll purchase lots of trees for us again in 2020. We're nearing that end, and you can see that number wanes a bit over the next 5 years in the EAB response. Tennis courts, specifically in Riverside, is the proposal for $2020, and then some items that we might not have gotten to if the fire truck stayed, and that specifically is on page 6, the $88,000 for the Bobcat and the Sand Scorpion. Mike and Craig Hepner, while he was here, shared with us that the chipper was really a priority, so we were going to try to keep that $85,000 in for a new chipper, regardless of the plan. And then on page 7, you see the Public Works numbers as well. We were anticipating purchasing a $275,000 new garbage truck, and we were able to add $190,000 tandem axle. And you can see that if you look at the year of the trucks that were purchased over on the left, there's a bunch of them in that 03 to 05. So the city, back at that time, 16 or so years ago, purchased a bunch of vehicles, and they're all kind of coming due at the same time. So if we can sneak one out in 2020, that's going to go a long ways in keeping Doug's fleet in a proper state. I don't know if there's any questions about that. I can talk specifically about the hoist and vehicle maintenance. That's a bit of a safety issue as well for our workers that are working with that equipment. And I think just maybe another note from a big picture standpoint, that in having conversations with the departments about improving and being able to improve the equipment, replace some of the equipment that has been on the schedule for some time, it has some ancillary effects that vehicle maintenance won't see some of that equipment and have to weld and fix and prioritize that. If we have some newer pieces of equipment in a couple of program areas, that'll go a long ways for helping the entire organization. Any questions or concerns? Steve, do you want me to just do that? Or? Rich?
So about, I think, 6 months ago, we had a presentation by Enterprise in terms of leasing even some of the pickup trucks and some of the more, the larger utility vehicles. Did we have any information on that as that moved forward? And any chance that would help us out?
Yeah, we're still anticipating entering into an RFP, request for proposal, for that leasing plan that for the personal vehicles. That's not, none of them are reflected in here with the exception of the intercept vehicle and fire. This budget actually keeps that plan intact by purchasing a new intercept vehicle at $35,000. We're able to preserve the one vehicle from fire that we were going to enter into the lease program. Available, it's a convoluted answer to your question, Rich, but available for the lease program because we need the funds of the trade-in of the existing vehicles to fund the first year.
But there's nothing has come up about changing out some of the 1-ton trucks with a leased, it's more the personal vehicles?
Yes, the personal vehicles is the place that we as staff have discussed starting with. And I mean, obviously this budget does a little bit more than just that by leasing a very expensive fire vehicle for the future. But it's just a different way of funding, and just like the leasing of the personal vehicles would be. We're still purchasing the fire truck. I just want to be clear about that we're not just renting the thing for a while. We're going to own it at the end of 10 years. It'll be a fire truck that stays with us, hopefully for 20 years, and just like the other trucks that we keep in service for a long time.
That gives us a cost mitigation strategy though, right? Where if the 1-ton trucks go up to $120,000 and we're currently budgeting $48,000, the leases give us a little bit of a cost mitigation. Okay, thanks.
Chris?
Jay, just to clarify, so on the first column on page 4 here, so that 1 million injection of roads, we can see that by just the 1, 2, 3 roads that we're attacking here? Is that correct? Or is part of that also going into pavement maintenance?
Yes. It's really both, because in the past, when we've spent $1 million on roads, we've spent $1 million on roads, including pavement maintenance. So the pavement maintenance is really taken it in the shorts, if you will, over the last few years.
So then in 2021, where pavement maintenance jumps, by a significant amount, is that where you're seeing that continued borrowing going into that line item?
It depends on the long-range transportation planning committee prioritization, Max's prioritization, where Max is following water and sewer, all of those things. I think you could view that pavement maintenance number at 1.2 million as, I won't say a plug number, because I know if you asked Max to come up to the podium, he would say that's a number that he needs, and I don't doubt that in the least. But it's also a number that he has been flexible with over the years, and even receiving $600,000 as dedicated pavement maintenance will go a long way in 2020.
And then I'll just echo the same comment I made last time around, and I'm speaking as 2 out of the 3 of these roads are in my district. But I still, to me, if we're going to spend the extra $1 million, borrow the extra $1 million, I would rather it go towards this list of other, capital projects that go on and on. I mean, I just added up, just doing the small items, kind of ticking them off. We can get 20 of the 2021 items done in 2020 if we didn't throw $1 million additional towards roads. So that's That's my opinion. I don't think it moves the needle enough to really make a difference, unfortunately, and I'd rather us make more improvements to these other items on this list. But that's just my opinion. Thank you.
Jay, am I missing it on here, or where is 7th Avenue on here? That everybody's talking about getting fixed. Did I miss it?
Good question. If it's not on there, then it's not on there, but it's still on the radar.
It can be on the radar. If it doesn't have funds, it's going to be tough to do much about it, other than see that it's there. And I don't think anybody knows anybody in West Bend who hasn't bitched about it recently.
Max, can I bug you to talk to the fact that we don't have it on this list, but yet we're still planning on that and 18th?
Thank you. I don't have the document in front of me, but I was looking at it on the screen here. And so that amount that you have that has the $2 million with pavement maintenance, there's a list underneath that table. And in that list, it should say design of 7th Avenue with a number there. And then the construction is planned for 2021. So the design in 2020 and the construction in 2021.
And then the timeline for 18th, Max, as well?
18th Avenue construction is planned for 2022. We just received the design contract signed by the DOT. So the consultant went out and started some work. There were some letters sent to the residents along the area letting them know that, you know, if you see people roaming on your land, don't shoot them. And then they're just surveying for the project. That's the plan. Designs going on into next year, then land acquisition, and then construction in 2022.
So it's not on our list, but that is, it must be on a different list that I. Oh, is
Page
it?
2 under PMP, Pavement Maintenance Program.
Oh, that page too.
Yeah.
So the prioritized pavement maintenance and number of roads that we've been working off of for years is the one that it's not on. So it's on the most recent, if you will, list that Max just talked through. And we've had Ellers do the budget projections with borrowing for those two roads inserted into them, as in addition to borrowing over and above the 3 million in those two, in 2021 and 2022.
Mm-hmm.
So if the 2021 is what we're looking at for the 7th Avenue, what remediation can we do ahead of that? I mean, it's getting to be like a third world country driving on one of our busiest roads.
I'm not sure, Max, if you want to tackle the remediation question or not, but my guess is not a lot before 2021, although talk through how the sewer and water improvements might come ahead of it or at the same time, or
We anticipate sewer and water will be at the same time, so it will be just 1 year of construction. As far as temporary repairs, unfortunately, I don't see anything of a substantial scale being able to address the condition of 7th Avenue while we wait. We've been doing, unfortunately, patching of the road and fixing in some areas, but at this point, the reconstruction is what makes sense. And doing a surface treatment, would not address deeper issues and would not, in my opinion, last very long. It might last a few months and then we would have to redo it. So we would be pouring water into a bucket with a hole at the bottom of it, I think. So that's the way I look at it.
Could we mitigate the additional wear and tear by posting it small, lighter vehicles? I mean, right now, I see, semi trucks going down there on not a terribly regular basis, but often enough to be concerned, because they do a lot more damage than the average, family station wagon.
Okay, I can discuss that with our Director of Public Works and our Chief of Police. We do have an ordinance with for the truck routes, and but we can look into it to see if further signage is warranted or it's possible to post for even, I would say, mid-sized vehicles or something like that. So I'll talk to them and we'll try coming up with a plan on that. We'll let you know.
Anybody else with any comments? Anything else, Jay, that we need to do with this, or?
If you're in support and giving us the thumbs up to continue to plan the 2020 budget with the $3,239,000 would be appreciated. As we prep for this, this is how we've been planning for 2020's budget. It doesn't have direct implications on the budget that you're going to see next week, but it would be helpful for departments to know whether to continue to plan for the equipment that they're going to replace.
Okay, so you'd like a motion to that effect?
Do you need a motion to move that forward?
Yes, we do.
Great.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any comments or questions? Excuse me. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed by the same sign?
Aye.
Okay. Continue to plan. And with that, I adjourn the special common council meeting, and I invite everybody over to the high school for the Veterans Tribute at 6 p.m. Thank you.